or if you did ask for any type of help, it may have been thrown in your face or used against you, or you were manipulated with it, or you know, it was just, there was negative consequences. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Missy. Don't mind my Missy here. I was supposed to do a video, but I wound up falling asleep while I was putting my toddler down for their nap time. Watch someone goes and comments under my videos and tries to hurt my feelings. It's like, but your hair always looks messy. Don't. We're trying our best. So last week we had talked about the effects of trauma, childhood trauma on men, and today we're going to be talking about the effects of childhood trauma on women. Now here's the thing, some people, they're like, I can relate and I'm not a man, or I can relate and I'm not a woman. That's fine. You can, you know, it's not like, oh, you know, these things don't happen to men or women. It's just that it's more likely, these things are more likely to affect women versus men, and then vice versa on the other video. So in the previous video I talked about where trauma is very individual, and it really has to do with the fact that it's when you're a child and you're dealing with trauma, it has to do with you're dealing with an intense negative event or situation, and it's overwhelming to that child. And what determines if it is trauma is based on how you process that event. So that is why one person could be going through one thing and not be traumatized, and another person could go through something similar and become traumatized by it. So with men, we had talked about they place their worth a lot on their success and their power. Women, we're going to be talking about, place their worth on relationships and others' outward validation. So like I said in the previous video, if you want to know about more trauma, I will leave my CPTSD video right here where you can go dive more into trauma and abuse and emotional abuse and physical abuse and sexual abuse and how all those things affect you. Today we're going to mainly focus on the effects of when you do deal with that type of abuse. One of the first things is people pleasing. So when you deal with somebody like a caregiver, someone that is supposed to be in charge of you and someone that's supposed to take care of you, if they don't attend to your needs, and you learn that the only way that they'll attend to your needs is by you pleasing them, and by needs it could mean like emotionally, like, you know, getting some sort of attention, or physically, like they will feed you or whatever it is, then you become a huge people pleaser. If you notice that your caregiver was overly angry, or like would snap on the drop of a hat, you would become a big people pleaser to try to prevent any type of explosion. Your trauma taught you that in order to get your needs met, you had to attend to your caregiver. And this could be because you have a fear of getting in trouble, getting yelled at, being abandoned. And so now you carry that on with you, and you now people please and try to cater to the people around you. And so you won't necessarily speak up, you won't maybe share your opinion, you may be afraid of that same getting in trouble, getting abandoned situation. Next is codependency. You feel that you're only worth anything when you are taking care of other people, and it can be to the point where it turns into an enmeshment. So you become one with like maybe your partner or someone that you're really close with, where you guys are like a mesh. Like your guys' feelings depend on one another. You cater to this person, you always need to take care of this person, and when you're not taking care of them, you feel worthless or bad about yourself. And this again goes back into childhood with that trauma of when you had a parent that would only be nice to you when you took care of them, when you would make them feel better, like you would make them laugh, or maybe when you would physically take care of them, maybe cook for them, or you know, help them through their problems. This creates that codependency, and you now will carry that with you into adulthood as well. For some, there's a need to be needed, and you only truly feel worth anything when you are needed. It's when you get those good fuzzy feelings, and that really comes down to the emptiness. Like you experience a lot of emptiness since you didn't get the love, care, and nurture as a child, and so the only way to fulfill that emptiness is by getting needed and taking care of others. The next is emotional dysregulation. When you deal with trauma, either gender and you have abusive caregivers, there's going to be emotional dysregulation. But the way that men and women deal with the emotional dysregulation can differ. So with men, in both circumstances, a lot of times you're taught to repress your emotions. With men, the way they deal with their shame is that they make sure that they don't show, they have a complete avoidance, and they make sure not to show any vulnerabilities or emotion, and then it winds up coming out in some sort of way, whether that's aggression and anger, or some get depression, some get anxiety, but it's very much hidden. They try to hide those aspects. With women, the way that they become emotionally dysregulated, they too can have those similar things, but more often women are, because men are shamed so much to the point where it's like they're told by society they're less of a man if they show emotion. With women, it's more okay for women to express emotion. So because of that, their anger will look different, and it can be in like crying fits. It could be, they could become very explosive. They may do things like or you may do things like you know, not think about consequences, and you may damage property, or you can have screaming fits. You may, whenever something's happening, you may just bawl out and start crying. Like, it's really hard for you to emotionally regulate, and that truly is because you were shamed and you were made to believe that you were not allowed to have these emotions, and you weren't taught how to have emotions. So they come out in big extreme ways because of that. Especially like when you're not taught how to have emotions in childhood, and then you get to adulthood, you will feel a little bit more comfortable maybe expressing emotions, but it's at the point now where you're completely dysregulated. You don't know how to manage your emotions at all, especially because when you, in trauma-based brains, research has shown that the emotional part of your brain is enhanced, like the instinct part of your brain is more enhanced, and the cognitive part of your brain is more shrunk. And it doesn't mean things can't change, it just shows that like you are more prone to big reactions and being more likely to be emotionally dysregulated. The next is low self-worth. When you don't have caregivers that build a foundation for you of validating you, making you feel good, building up your self-esteem, building up your confidence, encouraging you, you will feel low and bad about yourself, especially because it's usually the opposite. You usually will deal with someone putting you down, verbal abuse. They will take action and do things that make you feel worthless, like maybe not showing up to your concerts at school, or not allowing you to be in concerts at school even, or not, like, you know, not cheering you on, putting down everything that you do. There's just a sense of never feeling good enough no matter what you do. You could like grow up, be the top of your class in school, grow up like and get scholarships and all of that, and you'll have imposter syndrome. You'll never feel good enough. You'll feel unworthy, and you never really received any type of validation, and the bar was always raised higher and higher, and you were always trying to you know, get to that bar. But the minute you did, like, your parent may have raised it and been like, oh, you did that, okay, cool, but like your sister's doing X, Y, and Z, or you know, whatever it is, it was constantly like you always felt, and you still to this day feel worthless. Next is a lack of a secure sense of self. And this comes down to because you most likely had to, mold yourself into what you know, your caregiver wanted in order to survive. So you would do the things that they ask of you, and you would behave the ways that they would ask of you, but it wasn't maybe necessarily you and what you wanted. You did it in order to not receive any type of criticism, maybe being hit, being touched in any type of way. Like, there was just, you didn't fully like figure out who you are. You were taught that you have to be what everyone else wants you to be in order to be accepted, not be abandoned, and to be liked. So you learn not to trust yourself, and you will feel lost, or even there comes a point at some point where like you're in a job that you hate, you're maybe have friends you don't necessarily like, or you're just doing things that you're not happy or don't feel like you feel that your authentic self doesn't align with what you're doing, and you'll have a little bit of an identity crisis. Next thing is shame with sex. Growing up, women receive more shame and are criticized and taught to be a certain way to not get a male's attention, and we're taught to shame our bodies and to be shameful about craving sex or wanting sex. And so this could go one or two ways. This can cause you to become overly rebellious and be overly sexual to the point where it's unhealthy for you, because let's be honest, you can hate on me all you want, but having a lot of sexual partners is not healthy for your mind or your soul or your heart. We have things in our body where like oxytocin and stuff, it's to connect ourselves with a person, and the more people you have sex with, the less the oxytocin gets released, and you become less attached to the next person over and over again. Or it could go on the opposite end, where you will be afraid to have sex, or when you do have sex, you feel a lot of shame. And a lot of women that experience this, they wind up having burning. And it's something that's not talked about a lot, but women that feel shame, they'll have this unexplained, not medical reason to have this burning when they do have sex. And that really comes down to it's a psychological thing where they feel shame about having sex. And then this also causes them to lie about the amount of sex they're having, lie about maybe the amount of partners they have. They do it because they have so much shame revolving around sex. There are women that will crave sex, but they will hide it because of these feelings of shame, and feeling shame about their bodies, and feeling shame for craving, intimacy. The next is difficulty receiving love and support. You ever see women who are in relationships with men that are very giving of love and they're very supportive, and the women are just uncomfortable and they're like looking for the red flags? This is women that have been traumatized. This is women that have had maybe a father figure that, didn't show them how a man should treat a woman. This is because of, abusive relationships they've been in. This is from being tricked by different men. It scares them. They feel they have to do it on their own. And this is because they had no caregiver that they could trust. You as a woman, that if you struggled with, you did not have someone that you felt like you could rely on trust. You didn't have an adult figure, and so you had to do it on your own. Or if you did ask for any type of help, it may have been thrown in your face or used against you, or you were manipulated with it, or it was just, there was negative consequences. So now you take that with you into adulthood, and you are afraid of trying to receive any love. Love means that there's conditions to it, and support means that it could get taken away at some point, or it could be used against you. So you would rather do it yourself. You also become hyper independent. You feel you have to do it yourself, and it also can be an ego point to some degree, where it's like you have to do it yourself, or you do feel weak, or you feel low about yourself, and you worry about depending on another person because people have proven to you over and over that people are not dependable. The next is disconnection from your intuition. This is a huge one. Men and women both have intuition, 100%, but women are known to be more of the intuitive ones, and this is literally because we need to be more in tune with our babies when we have children. Like, we need to, like, because we're the breastfeeders and we're the ones that give birth to the babies, and the babies do crave the mom in the beginning few years of life more than the dad. Like, we have evolved to be more intuitive. And so what happens is that when you have someone in your life, a caregiver, whatever, that constantly shames you, puts you down, makes you feel bad, makes you feel like you can't trust yourself, says don't trust yourself, trust me, you always do it the wrong way, you don't know what you're doing, you constantly hear these things, you will be scared to trust yourself. And so you lose that connection to yourself because you're not listening to any, of those gnawing feelings that tell you to do things. You don't listen. You always feel like you have to listen to the person that has tormented you to listen to them. And then what happens over time is that you wind up trusting because you don't trust yourself, you wind up trusting people that are similar to the person that caused you the trauma, and you listen to what they have to say. And it's a very subconscious thing. You're not doing it on purpose or consciously. Subconsciously, you're like, okay, this reminds me of this person that I could trust, and they have all of these, you know, traits, so I'm gonna trust this person. And then you wind up getting hurt more because this person is not worth that trust. It's really repetition compulsion. We trust what is familiar. And the last is there's a subconscious fear of your feminine power. You may fear your own power and dim your light. And this is to avoid judgment or rejection. You may notice you struggle to own your own voice, own your own beauty, or your leadership abilities. And this is because of constantly being put down in childhood, you know, being told that you don't know what you're doing, you're not smart, or, you know, subliminal hidden things like, oh, you're really gonna do that, or I wouldn't do that if I were you. You know, hearing all these things over time, little by little, knock you down and make you feel like you can't voice your opinion. Maybe you were told you were too aggressive. Maybe you were told that you're too opinionated. Maybe you were told that you talk too much. Like, these little things, like, they knock you down. And it could only be like one time this happens. That could knock you down forever, where you're afraid to own your feminine power and like see that you have these skills. And it's because we deeply fear of rejection, and we fear of abandonment. So what I will say in order to heal these things is that, one, become aware of like your traumas and how they have affected you, and don't try to make excuses for the people that have hurt you. Don't, you know, because we as women especially have a habit of dismissing or overly being empathetic towards people. Like, it's so important that you hold them accountable and not just blame it on yourself and put it on yourself. It's so important to empower yourself and see that what has happened. It's so important for you to find where the problem areas are, and for you to learn how to reparent yourself and soothe yourself. And depending on your trauma, I have a whole video on trauma and how to heal from trauma, which I will leave right here. And I have somatic practices that you can do to, you know, be able to release the trauma from your body. But overall, when it comes to women, you have to learn how to be yourself and let go of people pleasing and depending on other people to feel good. You have to learn how to validate yourself. So what do you guys think? Leave it all in the comments below. And please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye, guys. Learn how to... Sorry for the change in color. It became nighttime all of a sudden. A lot has happened in between. I'm trying to get it together. Why am I struggling with my words so bad?